Hi guys, as some of you know, Florida passed Stop Woke Act and dozens of math textbooks were rejected. Why? Because they were promoting critical race theory. The agents of Comintern infiltrated the queen of science and put their propaganda in between the numbers. Think how crazy is that? The Florida Department of Education finally published 6,000-page review of these textbooks, and one of them is super woke, and you need to see it. The book is called Thinking Mathematically, 7th edition. The author is Bob Blitzer. He looks like a Trump supporter, but it's very misleading. He's got a bachelor degree in math and psychology, the most real science combined with the most fake, from the very prestigious City College of New York. I haven't checked this university, but probably it's a rival of Stanford and MIT. Let's look inside this amazing gem book. What is the goal of math? To explain you the reason for poverty. There is a chapter called Survey Problems, and here you have two answers: laziness and social injustice. Of course, racist Americans think that this is because laziness, but Mexicans knows the truth, it's because societal injustice. The source of the survey is some kind of woke book called World Values Surveys. How is this related to math or even science? There is no answer to that. Students must learn how to identify racism even in math. Maybe you think that I'm overreacting and the author doesn't suggest anything, he just gives you the data and it's up to the student to decide. Nope, there is another gem from the book, from the logic section. There is a group exercise about prejudice and stereotypes. The author says that it's easy to make a wrong logical conclusion based on stereotypes and asks students to challenge the statement, people on welfare are lazy. How is this crap related to math? Another task from the same section. Conservative commentator Rush Limbaugh directed this passage at liberals and the way they think about crime. Of course, liberals will argue that these actions, contemporary youth crime, can be laid at the foot of socioeconomic inequities or poverty. However, the Great Depression caused a level of poverty unknown to exist in America today, and yet I have been unable to find any accounts of crime waves sweeping our large cities. Let the liberals chew on that. Then your task is basically to find invalid arguments and destroy Limbaugh's logic. You know, once I traveled with my friend from Colombia to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and back then the GDP per capita of these countries were roughly the same. And he was truly shocked how safe it was to walk at night compared to Colombia, and thought that high crime in Colombia is related to poverty. Is it a good argument? In another section, the author explains us why we should use median, not mean income. The relative few people with very high annual incomes tend to pull the mean income to a value considerably greater than the median income. Reporting mean income in figure 12.7 would inflate the numbers shown, making them non-representative of the millions of workers in each of the 8 groups. Workers of the world, unite! Then you have different races and genders and their median income to prove the student that Hispanic women are being systematically discriminated against. The fact that Hispanic women have different rates of education and quite often are not even fluent in English is not mentioned, of course. Then another graph shows that females earn less after graduation. Well, tech grads are being paid way higher than gender studies one. Women generally don't want to study tech for some reason, but you don't need to know about that. This is the best one. How wide is the chasm between the men and women earn in the workplace? According to 2015 analysis from the National Women's Law Center, women lose $435,000 over the course of a career because of the pay gap. Measuring racial prejudice by age. What the heck is that? How scientific are these woke data? Usually, the younger you are, the more you believe in the leftist ideas that everyone is equal and blah blah blah. And I definitely was more open-minded when I was 18. Here the bias goes down with age and then grows again after 45. I guess the idea here is that every student thinks that he's less racist than his or her parents. But the graph meant to prove that you're racist no matter what. Diversity index. It's not just an abstract term, there is a clear mathematical definition. It is the chance that two randomly selected people are of a different race or ethnicity. Then you have a glorious graph of how this number is going up over the time. And the goal of your life must be to increase world diversity. Why it's good? Well, that's a racist question. Time for a word of the day. Hamachi phobia. It's a conservative mental disease where people are afraid to eat sushi. The author argues that there is a correlation between hamachi phobia and being opposed to marriage equality. Give me a break. The algebra section starts with fat propaganda. The modern emphasis on thinness as the ideal body shape has been suggested as a major cause of eating disorders among women. Suggested by who? Scientists from Kazakhstan? Tattoo propaganda in a math book. Why not to get a math tattoo on your hand at the end of this course? And I must agree that tattoos are getting more and more popular, and there is quite a negative correlation of a number of tattoos to your income. If you get a face tattoo, it's almost always sure you're in the bottom 20. Then the author has an unhealthy obsession with juice. Do you remember any mentioning of juice in your math textbook? I don't, but here we go. The task is to arrange the jokes from the best to the worst. One of the joke is, why do Jewish divorces cost so much? Because they're worth it. Ha ha ha. In one of the logic tasks, there is a following statement. It is not the case that Jewish scriptures gives a clear indication of heaven or an afterlife. Well, it's true that heaven was made up by John the Baptist to convince his terrorist sect to die for the religion, but wouldn't it be more nice and inclusive to have some logical statement about Prophet Muhammad? Oh, Islam is a forbidden topic in woke math. Also number 17, it's not the case that the United States has eradicated poverty or racism. The last anti-Semitic exercise is to discuss medieval banking system and who charged higher rates, Jews or Christians. Again, Muslims are omitted. Also, the author forces students to perform satanic tasks like multiplying 666 by 666 using calculator. Next, exercise about providing valid arguments for the following woke issues. Please remember it's still a math class. Should Roe v. Wade be overturned? Should recreational marijuana be legalized? Should the Electoral College be replaced with a popular vote? The author's obsession with drugs is everywhere. In another exercise, you need to find a correlation between marijuana and other illegal drug use. There is a correlation according to the author, but correlation is not causation. Students should find a logical fallacy in the following statement. Statistics show that nearly every heroin user started out by using marijuana. It's reasonable to conclude that smoking marijuana leads to harder drugs. Basically, the author suggests that smoking pot is okay according to the math. The last but not least is climate change. There is a strong scientific consensus that human activities are changing the Earth's climate. Scientists now believe that there is a striking correlation between atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration and global temperature. Basically, the goal of this task is to make every student mathematically prove that CO2 global warming is real. I think this is one of the best indoctrination in the book. The author shamelessly picked up only some of the years to make everything look ideally smooth. CO2 is rising, so does the temperature. Really no-brainer. If someone tells you that climate change is not a settled issue, you can always reply, it's settled. I prove it in my math class. If you open the most leftist climate.go's temperatures year by year, there are many obvious issues with correlation. The temperature from 1910 to 1945 gradually rose by 0.6 Celsius. Then it's flat from 1945 to 1980, and then the growth is started again from 1980 until 2020 for 0.7 Celsius. The CO2 emissions back in 1930 was around 3.5 billions of tons, which is 10 times less than the current level of emission. You don't need to be a mathematician to understand that the rise from 1910 to 1945 is unlikely due to CO2. Otherwise, the current rate of the temperature growth would have been 10 times higher, speaking about correlation. The situation from 1945 to 1980 is even more problematic. The emission of 1960s were 1/3 of the current level, and in 1970s 1/2 of the current level, which is rather significant. Yet no temperature rise until 90s. There is simply no correlation, and it's clear that there are some other processes which makes global temperature change. The Church of Global Warming doesn't want you to know that scientists are having hard times explaining these events. This doesn't cancel the possibility that CO2 is responsible largely for global warming, but it doesn't prove it as well. If you want me to make a separate video about climate change and the current science, let me know in the comments. For now, this is the end of the review. Aside of the wokeness of that book, I must admit that as a person with a math background, the level of that book is like extremely low. No wonder why there are so many people in the US who thinks that college education is useless. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time. Bye.